Welcome to Hellish. I'm Daniel Whelan and I am Hell's receptionist. Each week I flay the minds of the newly damned until they release unto me their infernal playlists. The 5 tracks they will be doomed to listen to for every second of their afterlife. If you are thinking that this is too big a task for one man, fear not. I am ably assisted by the person who oversees Hell's greatest achievement, social media, ensuring it becomes ever worse while also becoming increasingly more addictive. Satan's T-Boy, Mr. Alex Gale. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Dan.
How are things with you today?
It's been up and down this week. It's been up and down.
Yeah?
We've had to... my cat, which I mentioned on previous episodes, he was run over. He died.
Oh.
He finally has died.
Oh.
We had to put him down. So that's the down.
Right,
but
okay,
the up
good.
The up is it led to a conversation with, I don't know if you know Rico, who is in accounts payable down for Lucifer.
Oh, yeah. Old Rico, yeah.
Yeah, he was telling me his uncle was on the way to work, and Rico's, he's from West Africa. His uncle, well, before he came to hell, his uncle was on the way to work, and he ran over a cat.
Right.
So he felt awful. So he got out of the car and he saw the cat by the side of the road, still alive. So he went up to it and he thought, I've got to put it out of its misery. So he grabbed the cat by its hind legs and dashed its head against a rock or hit it with a brick or something, whatever he did.
Right.
So then he got back in the car, drove to the office, got out of the car, parked the car up, walked to the pavement at the front of the car, turned round and saw the cat that he'd actually run over in the grill of his car.
Oh.
So
he'd murdered a random cat.
Yeah. Which,
okay.
So ups and downs for me this week, Dan.
Okay, that's good. It's good. I like that we've started the show with the loss of your dearly beloved cat, and then the murder of a totally innocent cat. This is
how we like to do things down here.
Yeah, well, apparently it is. So now we must press on. Who have you plucked from the never-ending queue of damned souls? To whom will we be subjecting endless musical pain?
Well, this week I've chosen the Scottish writer Martin Stewart. Martin has written a number of books for younger readers in many genres, from the teen horror of The Sacrifice Box to the Bridget Vanderpuff series for the over-8s. This year, he published his first adult fiction book, the crime novel Double Proof, which has been shortlisted for the Bloody Scotland Scottish Crime Debut of the Year prize.
Okay, Martin Stewart, welcome to Hell.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a huge fan of that introduction. It was unexpectedly gruesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I suspect that probably lots of listeners will have turned off after 30 seconds. So it's good. Hopefully we can bring them back. So Double Proof, exciting new book. I was wondering, when you have had a career as a successful children's novelist, and it seems to me that each time you've brought out a children's book, it's been in a slightly different genre and a slightly different age group. Mm-hmm. Is there ever a point where somebody like a publisher or an agent goes, Martin, can you not just stick to one thing for a little bit? Do you ever have that conversation? Do they ever call you up on it?
Yes, absolutely. Very much a sort of, what are you doing type conversation. Yeah. Because what's interesting is there's an artistic process going on. You wouldn't necessarily think that if you saw me doing it, slouched in sweatpants with a laptop sort of thing. But the creative process is one side of it. But there's a commercial, promotional side to it that I think is something that I've not necessarily fitted in particularly well with in terms of not making myself categorizable, and you can put it on a shelf and it goes here every time, So I think definitely the age range, I think you're exactly right. I think the first book I had, they took the swearing out the first draft.
Oh.
And I think they were trying to pitch it at a sort of Philip Pullman, Northern Lights, quite sort of capable readers, maybe 11 and up.
Yes.
And so they wanted it round about there. The next one, as Alex was saying, is like a sort of teen horror. It was a sort of YA comedy horror. set in the 80s, which I did write before Stranger Things, and that's quite important. Even just for myself, you know.
But surely, when Stranger Things then comes out, and you, at the perfect moment, you have this book that people can say, if you love Stranger Things, read The Sacrifice Box.
It definitely helped, because actually when I was writing it, a friend of mine had texted me. I was on holiday to say, "Have you seen this trailer on Netflix?" It was fit. The book was finished, and I said, "No." So I watched it, and I thought, "Oh no, well this is what I'm doing."
Yeah.
And actually, exactly as you say, it became a, if you like Stranger Things, you know, the sort of Scottish Stranger Things. But it was maybe pitched sort of 13, 14 and up, down to, you know, Bridget Vanderpuff maybe for 8-year-olds, and so everything. It's funny. I think these are just the stories that have occurred to me, and the ideas, because I mean, ideas are the sort of easy part of it. They are the ideas that have endured when they've been worked upon thoroughly. The Double Proof and Bridget Vanderpuff, that's the fruit of lockdown, really. And it was very much because I was writing without a contract, which was the first time I'd ever done that. Everything I'd had a 1-book deal, but was writing to fulfill that brief, essentially, you know. These were things I didn't have a contract. The world had sort of shut down, so I had been chatting to my wife about it and said, you know, I'm going to do these things, and this is really my last go at this, to see if I can really make something happen with these. And I wanted to do the best work that I could, and if it didn't work, and if nobody picked them up, that's okay. You know, I'm an English teacher. I'll go back to teaching, and I'll still write, because it's deep within me. You write because you write. You know.
It's interesting to hear that you had this moment where you thought maybe that might be it for writing, because what it seemed to me, like watching your career over the last 9 years or so, has been that you're always there. You're always putting something out. It's always something interesting that I know that I'm going to have a good time when a new Martin Stewart book drops. So I think that's interesting to hear, and also I think that's something that a lot of people will be interesting to hear, because I think when we put ourselves out on the internet, very often it seems like we're all living our best lives.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's quite interesting to hear that you thought that there might be a moment where it was done.
I mean, completely. It's something I think about a lot, because the stuff online is an unboxing, and here's the new cover and all that kind of stuff. And it's the end product. And of course, the actual process is, I mean, it's been years of waiting for, I think, did I go 3 years at one point without a new contract? Which is nerve-wracking, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously, as I say, it's sort of, to me, it's interesting how it plays into what you do creatively then, because if you're doing it just as part of a creative impulse, it feels a little bit different to me to do it professionally, and to do it because it's work. You know, when a hobby becomes a job, it feels a bit different, and it's slightly more worrying, and it can be more fun and all that kind of stuff. And I've enjoyed the process hugely. But that was, as I say, the first book was leaving teaching. Christmas 2014 was because Penguin bought a short story I had written to turn into a full-length book.
Wow.
And so that was really unexpected. And it was something I had done because I broke, this is a very quick version of this story, I broke both my kneecaps playing football.
Oh, wow.
Which was about as bad as it sounds. I then
I
broke my right kneecap again when I was teaching. We were on a Duke of Edinburgh walk. I just fell like an older person, you know, on my knee. I'd split my kneecap, and I had to walk about 1.5 miles back to the minibus on a split kneecap. It was pretty badass. I think it would make a good film.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm seeing James Franco in the role.
Walks back to minibus with bad knee.
Yeah, I can.
So we did all that,
it.
and I got my operation in the October, and was off work all the way through New Year. And I don't know about you, I don't write short fiction. I think in terms of longer stories, but I was off work, and I had my agent for my sort of scary existential horror book for kids, which has never seen the light of day. And one of her other clients was doing a thing in his blog for Halloween, so I wrote a short story for it in a couple of days, because I was just holed up, a bit like in Misery, you know, just sitting there with my typewriter. And a year later, Penguin bought that to turn into a full-length book. So that was this real sort of in with 2 feet thing, because it wasn't that I got like, obviously the kids I was teaching, because I left halfway through the year, assumed that I'd been given, a couple of million and I was off because I didn't need to work anymore. So it wasn't anything like that. The book was due in by April.
Right.
And there was just no way
So
of doing it and teaching full time.
You had 4 months to turn a short story into a novel.
Yeah. So I left in December. I started it on the 5th of January 2015. The first draft took me 6 weeks, because that was this sort of panic. Yeah. The bit when I'm talking to kids in school about this, I use a GIF of, do you know, in the wrong trousers?
Oh, he's not the train one.
And he's putting out the track in front of him in this mad panic. It was just like that. So it just tumbled out, and I had no kids. I used to write 1,000 words, in between 1,000 and 2,000 words a day. And the next morning I would edit that, and in the afternoon I would write between 1,000 and 2,000 words, and just putting out the track in front of me, and I mean, I write much slower than that now. It is fair to say, but that was that first experience.
At the end of that 4 months, you hand in this draft that I'm assuming has been polished. You did the 6 weeks of just getting the draft out, and then over the other weeks up until whenever it would have been April or whatever, you are finessing. I'm assuming that you have back and forth with an editor in this process. Do you send something to an editor, they give you feedback? Or does that happen once you've put that draft into them? How does that work?
Yeah, so once I put the first draft in, we went back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
But where you're at now, Martin, because this was what's interesting to me, because to us as outsiders, you've written a book for sort of 8-year-olds, and then you've suddenly, now you're an adult writer, but you wrote them sort of at the same time. So it kind of, how do you decide now what you're going to be in the future?
Honestly, there's an element of it that is just the kind of, I'll write what I'm allowed to write, what they'll publish. I really like. I love just writing. I love the craft of it, and I enjoy being given challenges. I mean, if somebody offered me a publishing contract to write, kittens in space or something, I mean, I'm not interested in that, but I'd think, right, here we go, crack my knuckles, roll up my sleeves, and I enjoy that element of it. The kids stuff was because I was a teacher. I was slightly surprised to find myself wanting to write for younger readers in the first place. I love being a kids author. I do a lot of school visits now. The Bridget books have taken me into primary schools, because my background is more as a secondary teacher. So now you go into primary schools, and I mean, it's so different. They all read books, and they want to ask you questions, and you get a wee
tiny toilets.
The tiny toilets. And, a queue of kids wanting a high five on the way out and things. Yeah. You do not get that in secondary schools or at adult events for crime novels.
My experience was when I wrote my book for children, and I'd go into the primary schools, is that it used to feel like being in one direction for a day, or BTS or whatever, is that they think you are the most famous person that has ever walked the earth.
Yes.
Even though none of them knew who you were before you got there, and they've all forgotten you by the time they get home. But the time that you're in the school, you are a celebrity, and I got to say, it's a pretty nice way to be a celebrity, because you don't get any of the crap.
No, absolutely. And this thing is because they've Googled you before you've gone in.
Yes.
So the class will say, and so Daniel's coming in, and they look you up, and there you are on Google, and they think, oh my God, this guy's like Coca-Cola, And so the thing is, it's part of how you're introduced as well, because it's almost always, I do some workshops and things, but generally the schools all want as many kids as possible. So it's the assembly. There's maybe 300 kids in there.
Right.
And they're all sitting there, and the head teacher will come out, and she'll say, hello, boys and girls. And the boys and girls will say, hello, Mrs. Head Teacher. And they say, we have a very special visitor today. And I'm standing there, and see, by the time you've heard that 10, 20, 30 times, you quite like being a special visitor.
Yeah.
It's I'm quite
Where's
special.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's great.
I had I went to one school visit, and they'd obviously been Googling ahead of time, because I always log what I'm reading on Goodreads. And one of the questions in this school, someone put their hand up and said, are you still on page 127 of Madame Bovary? That was one of their questions. So it's like, no, actually, I've read a little bit more since then. So yeah, it's always fun to do that kind of stuff. But now you're in the big bad world of crime fiction. Double Proof. Obviously, you have made this move away from children's fiction.
I'd be interested to know if you scanned my brain, if I'm using a different part of my brain when I'm writing that as opposed to writing for the kids. To me, it feels pretty much the same. I think actually the characters of Bridget and Gould, Robbie Gould, who is the central character in Double Proof, are very similar characters. They've got similar energy. They are slightly outside of social norms, and in Bridget's world, it's for 8 to 12-year-olds. It's very positive. It's really fun. There's a different kind of energy, and that was a voice that I found really hard to kind of manifest at first. That sort of kids' TV presenter energy, positivity. Whereas for Double Proof, the main character is a sarcastic Glaswegian prick. And that was a much more natural fit for me, make it almost effortless, make of that what you will. It tumbled out, and being able to kind of swear a little bit and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like Alex had said earlier, like I was writing them literally at the same time. There was never a moment where I realised that I had accidentally had Bridget call her head teacher an arsehole or something. There was no bleed through at any point.
No.
But there is, to me, I don't know. I think stories to me are hungry things that need to be fed, and there's just it's a vocabulary, and it's about the pace and about the sort of length of the chapters, and some sort of technical things. But it's something that is, I just kind of felt there's a rhythm I feel when I'm writing. I'm sure I remember Patrick Ness saying of a novel that it's not the whole idea. It's the performance of the idea, and there is that sense of having this thing in your head and you want to get it onto the page. And I feel when I'm writing that there is a version of the story that is exactly what it should be, that is in my mind as this sort of shimmering golden thread, and I'm trying to grasp it all the time. And there's a nervousness about kind of sticking the landing. For Double Proof, it was a really natural fit, and being in Glasgow, which was the first time I'd ever done anything in a real place. There's a lot of books about Glasgow. There's a lot of crime books about Glasgow. You're treading in some pretty deep footprints, and I was aware of that. And obviously when the geography is fixed, you can get it wrong, So actually I was surprised to find that it was a real support. It was great. It actually, the facts and the reality of the space really fed the story and drove where he would go next, and in terms of the timeline, well, he couldn't go here, and I didn't want to send him. It's about whiskey. The Double Proof is is a rare and expensive whiskey that went missing 50 years ago and has now been found, and there's this court case over ownership of it. And as this is happening, the family who once produced this great whiskey, their son, who's an aspirant influencer, goes missing, and they start getting ransom demands. And this is the sort of chaos that Robbie Gould comes into. So bringing in whiskey and all this sort of playing a little bit with stereotype and things, part of the reality of writing about Glasgow, I didn't want to send him, or couldn't send him, to a distillery because it was too long a drive. Even the closest one to Glasgow is, I think, Glengoyne, which is up at the north of the city. But it would take him too long to drive there and back, so we have to do something else. And I really enjoy the sort of interplay of the creative process with the parameters of reality, kind of making you think your way out the box.
You should have just said it in Llandud. No, there's a distillery in Llandud. No, now.
Next time.
Oh, perfect.
Martin, as you may know, you are with us while Inhuman Resources finds you a suitably painful and tedious task to do for the rest of your afterlife. While you wait, we will be compiling the soundtrack to your future unpleasantness, the 5 tracks you will meet in hell. But before we get started on that, our Inhuman Resources manager has asked us to ask you what the worst job you have ever done is.
Essentially, it's sales.
Right.
Which is just not my natural milieu. And I was a recruitment consultant for a year, and I spent that entire year trying to recruit myself elsewhere. But the ultimate worst day of work, because it was only one day, was something that I had done prior to that when I was really at a loose end. And I responded to this advert in the local paper, and it was about some sort of, I can't even remember how they phrased it, some sort of brand building. You set up your own company, and you worked with various global brands like the New York Yankees and Disney and all this kind of stuff. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I went here and they pitched it to about 100 people had turned up in this room, and we drove out to the kind of the hinterland, the kind of central belt perineum between Glasgow and Edinburgh, in all these wee towns where people have unironic mullets, this kind of stuff. And so we were out here, and I'm with this guy who's talking about, after 3 years here, you'll have your own company, and he's got this big bag of stuff, and I still have no idea what we're doing. And he gets out the car, he's talking about all these meetings we're going to have during the day, and he walks up to a tanning salon, and I'm thinking, this is not where I was expecting to go for the meeting. Right. And he walks up to the counter and she says, hi, can I help you? And he says, have I got a wonderful offer for you today? And I thought, oh no. Oh, we're just selling stuff. He just had like a bag of like Mickey Mouse teddies and things. We were just shilling them, door to door. And I thought, oh, dang, because this guy had driven me here. I was stuck, Yeah. So there was this whole day of traipsing around with this quite intense fellow trying to sell things out of a bag to people in pubs in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. Like it was extraordinary. And as he's saying to me, and after he says a few times, he says, listen, after 3 years, you'll have your own company. And I said, how long have you worked here? He said, 5 years. And I'm thinking, this is beyond parody. Just so.
It sounds like an apprentice task.
Yes.
It does. So here's a bag of shit.
Yeah.
Yes. We want 100 quid. You've got 3 hours. Go.
Yeah. You've got to recruit some Scottish students to help you sell 15,000 Mickey Mouse toys.
That was exactly it. And it was just, it was, I had such a feeling of dread throughout the day. Doing that for eternity would be genuinely the worst thing that I could possibly imagine. Recruitment consultancy would be close, but at least I had a comfortable chair and could make myself a cup of tea every so often.
I think that's amongst the worst we've had yet.
Yeah, great. I'm
delighted
delighted about
absolutely horrible.
I'm sure that Tracy in HR will be putting that on her list.
Yeah, you're welcome, Tracy.
So let's get on to these songs now. So, track 1 of your Infernal playlist, we ask for a song that you used to like that you are now embarrassed by. So what's that going to be?
That is going to be Come On You Reds by Manchester United.
Okay, very much a football classic. Alex, not the first time it's been in hell, so have you got anything new to tell me about Come On You Reds by the Manchester United football squad?
Oh, yeah, weirdly, picked twice, such an obscure song, hard to believe. But for those who haven't heard, it was released in April 1994 ahead of the FA Cup final, written and produced by Status Quo, and is based on their 1988 single, Burning Bridges. Reached number 1 in the UK, stayed there for 2 weeks. In a 2023 New York Times article about the song, I have no idea why they were writing it, former striker Brian McClare is quoted as saying, I wasn't a good singer and I couldn't play musical instruments, but it's amazing how the sound engineers can make you sound. The technology was good even then. People took weeks to record shit. We did it in an afternoon, and we all sounded professional.
You can hear that in the voice of a 90s footballer, can't you? Wow.
We did it in an afternoon. I'm so fascinated that 2 people could have liked this song so much. But yeah, Martin, please tell us about your history with this song.
But the truth is, I bought this in cassette in HMV in East Kilbride. Now, the extent to which I'm telling the truth about this song and my owning it is that HMV in East Kilbride was directly opposite our price. Now, I would rather say I bought it in our price and really date it for people of our vintage, you know. But it was HMV, and I borrowed 10p from the security guard to buy it. Who my pal dared me to do this, and he was obviously listening, this massive man, as we were doing this, and he was looking at me, and I said, "Could I borrow it?" And he said, "If you don't ask, you don't get, wee man." And there we go. And he gave me 10p, and I bought this.
Wow.
And I don't quite know. I know what an amazing thing to do. It's really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's incredible.
In a way, I'm not sure you could call it an act of kindness, because it inflicted this on me and on my household. Because I just played this all the time. I think I remember there being more of a sense of sort of, not peer pressure, but there was an expectation. Everybody was listening to this. People were singing it in the corridor at school.
Yeah.
I couldn't have. I would have thought it was slightly earlier. 1994 I would be primary 7, so I'd have been 11 at this point.
Okay.
I would like to have been slightly younger.
Right.
Just for my own credibility, but there you go. I was 11, and it was obviously just the thing. And so I very much remember this as a kind of a sort of trying to fit in purchase, but I also then really did like it. And the bit that you played is perfect. It's the Robson Kanchelski.
Yeah, it's the best bit.
That's the bit that's drilled into me.
You remember the team.
Yeah.
So I found out that in Scotland, it was number 1 in the UK. Mm-hmm. In Scotland, it only reached number 4.
Do you know,
on the Scottish singles chart. And obviously, you were a big part of that chart placing. Are you a Manchester United fan?
No, absolutely not.
See, that makes it even stranger, because previously, when this song was added to the list, it was from a non-Man United fan as well.
Yeah, Michelle Farr Scott.
Mm-hmm. It's so strange that this song had such cut through.
Yeah.
It was such a hit.
It was such a thing, and obviously this is because of the time period. And I'm really interested in the way I'm growing old. I'll be 42 in November, so I'm obsessed with time and what age I was at this point and all that kind of stuff. The way that young people consume music now, as opposed to the way we consumed it, where this would be on Top of the Pops, and so everything was put through a funnel into your head, And so it wasn't anything to do with being a Manchester United fan or anything like that at all. I mean, it was just there anyway. But I remember it also. There was a certain, not a cachet in having it or buying it, but it was, as I said, there was an element of really fitting in, because it was the thing that people were singing. That was also the same sort of period where the other thing that people were singing was the jingle for Club Biscuits.
Ah, yes.
I don't remember that.
Like a lot of chocolate on your biscuit.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I do remember that.
There we go. So it's that sort of thing. This was the equivalent of the Club Biscuit jingle, and it's very jingly,
But
it is, yeah.
But the weird thing about that is that Radio 1 weren't playing the Club Biscuit jingle, right?
No.
Come On You Reds, it was number 1, which means that Radio 1 had to play it.
Yep.
But it was number 1, I think it was number 1 for 2 weeks, did you say, Alex?
Yeah, it was. And it stayed in the charts for something like 15 weeks. It was in the top 40 for a long time.
I was listening to Manchester United defender Steve Bruce talk about this song, and he was saying how he's got a disc for it that says it sold 500,000 copies, which, if you want to be number 1 now, you have to sell 17,000. Mm-hmm. So, incredible that 500,000 people.
It speaks of just a different era.
Yeah.
And I've really, it very much connects. I mean, it connects to young me, because I would never dream of buying this now. I had such an interest in football at the time. I watched a couple of games. I didn't even watch all of Scotland's games at the Euros, because I was trying to put my son to sleep, And I mean, that was fine. I didn't miss much, obviously.
But I was going to say, you could have used the games.
I don't. It was. I mean, it's very different, because there was, when I was younger, even when I was at uni, I would have known weeks in advance who was playing in the Champions League on a Tuesday and all that kind of thing. And I now feel as though I've sort of escaped a kind of mental prison I built for myself. I used to think about it all the time and do my fantasy team and all this kind of stuff, and I just don't do any of it now. And this song, it seems so like. I mean, it's obviously it's a childish thing. I mean, it was when I was 11, but it just seems to come from another world completely.
Am I right in saying, Martin, that you played for Scotland in some kind of writers' football team? Is that
yes?
Correct?
I've played a few times for Scotland.
Okay.
Now, that's
is this a football team of writers?
Yes, this is the Scottish Writers FC.
Right.
So I've played a few times. Actually, my connection to bloody Scotland, because this is me, I'm up for the debut prize, having never written adult crime before. But they do a game every year, which is a five-a-side game, where the Scottish writers play the English writers.
Right.
And I've been brought in as a ringer to playing goals because of previous knee history. I can't play outfield anymore. So I've been brought into playing goals 3 times.
Are all the others crime writers?
Everybody's a crime writer.
Apart from, well, you are now as well.
Everybody else has been on panels and been doing events. I think they one time maybe had somebody from the Scottish Book Trust. And occasionally, if they've been loan players, like one of the Icelandic guys has come and played for the Scottish team and that kind of thing.
Right.
But so I've played 3 times there. But the proper Scottish Writers FC, I've played for a few times, also in goals, including an away trip to Italy to play the Italian Writers FC.
Oh, wow.
Which was just, I mean, in terms of thinking about having done this for a number of years, there are some things that you sort of expect, which are, seeing your book in Waterstones and stuff. And that is great. It's really nice. The unexpected things are things like this and, going to Italy. There's a town in Italy called Barga in Tuscany, which is the most Scottish town in Italy. And it's where likes of Nicola Benedetti and Paolo Nutini and, Armando Iannucci, all, sort of that west coast of Scotland, Italian second and third generation, they all came from Barga. They have this big weekend where all these big Italian guys with, real sort of Mediterranean, these olive-skinned, hugely handsome guys with big beards walk about with, the kilts where you've got the big bit of tartan over the shoulder.
Right.
All that stuff. And so we were brought in to play the Italian writers in this game. We had mascots. We sang the anthems. It was brilliant. Then we got beat 5-0.
Right.
But you should have seen some of these guys. We were out the night before, and the Scottish Writers FC makes it sound as though there might be a pool of 50 writers, and the elites have been selected for this team.
This is what I was going to say with the Scottish crime team, because I'm thinking the Scottish crime football team, they've got a depth of squad there that England probably can't match.
For 5-a-sides,
right?
Sure.
Okay.
For the Scottish Writers team, especially going abroad, this is before I had kids. I wouldn't be able to go now. That kind of thing. It's just who can make it, anyone. And this is why I was playing, because it's not. If there was a selection process, I would not have passed.
Right.
But we were over there, and so we were out the night before. The boys are all then up, feeling a little bit delicate. It's 30 degrees. And we have to play these guys, some of whom were terrific footballers. And afterwards, I was talking to one of the Italian guys, and I said, he's a very good player. And he says, yes, he played for Napoli. And it was like, oh. So these 4 or 5 of their team were guys who had been on the books at Serie A clubs, but got injured and were now journalists or not quite made it. And, so they were fantastic football. 5-0 was really pretty good.
I am now curious as to whether or not there is a Welsh writers team. I'm a bit annoyed that the Welsh writers haven't been invited to your little England-Scotland thing, I have to say.
Yep.
I'm as well established on this podcast, I know nothing about football, but I am prepared to put on some shorts if it means going to Italy. So
yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So if there is a Wales writers team, sign me up.
I'm sure there will be.
I don't doubt it. We'd hammer you in rugby though. So anyway, track 2 on your Infernal playlist is a song that is universally adored that you cannot stand. So what's that?
Now, if I am permitted a dishonor, because I was thinking about this very seriously as well.
Ooh,
if I'm permitted a dishonourable mention, it is.
Yeah, okay, we'll allow it.
It's The Man Who Sold the World.
Oh,
which I've heard too many cover versions of it. I like Nirvana's cover version.
Yeah.
I heard a cover version by Lulu a couple of weeks
great.
ago, which I think in my imagination, when I am in the elevator on the way down here,
yeah,
Lulu's cover of The Man Who Sold the World might well be playing.
You know what? I'm going to make that happen. I'm going to establish that as Hell Canon now.
It was pretty extraordinary. But the one that I've gone for, and this caused a little bit of discussion with my wife, is Wichita Lineman.
And I need you more than want you, and I want you for all time, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line.
Oh, Martin has put the fingers to his head while listening to that beautiful, beautiful song, Wichita Lineman. Alex, talk to us about this song, please.
It's a 1968 song written by Jimmy Webb for country star Glenn Campbell and backed by the Wrecking Crew, the famous group of LA session musicians of whom Glenn Campbell was a member. The song appeared on Campbell's album of the same name, and as a single reached number 3 on the US charts. It featured in Rolling Stone magazine's 500 greatest songs of all time. In 2019, the Library of Congress preserved the song in the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And Bob Dylan has said that it is the greatest song ever written.
So, Martin, tell us why the Library of Congress are a bunch of idiots, please. What's wrong with this?
First, can I say, I had said, when you were lining that up, this caused a bit of discussion with my wife because she queried my sort of assertion that this was universally adored, which it was an interesting thing to think about. Mm-hmm. How does one know? I mean, without access to your research, Alex, and the kind of pretty unassailable evidence of its greatness that you've provided. I felt it to be. She really wasn't sure, but I think that pretty conclusively demonstrates that it must be.
Yeah. No, I think it is.
I find it sort of, I don't know, seductively awful in a sort of whining. Every line feels as though it might be the soundtrack for somebody having been shot through the chest and falling off a cliff. You know, that sort of line, and off he goes. I mean, it's just, I find it unbearable. And I think there's something about, and this is why I really like, as I say, I love the format. I think that's the thing with this, that it's because it seems to be so revered that you kind of resent it. You know, when you hear it played, people will sort of people get misty-eyed, and you think, can you not hear this? You know, and so it's that sort of wheedling, whining, keening lament that seems to be, I don't know, there's something about it it's reaching for something, and I just think, no, thank you. I find it hard. I mean, obviously, if Bob Dylan says he thinks it's the greatest song ever written, it's very hard for me, who can't play a musical instrument, to go against that. But as a consumer of the sound, I do not think that, and I hate it.
I think it's such a weird subject for the song. It's like it's about a guy fixing telephone cables. Mm-hmm. It's really odd.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a metaphor. It's not.
Is it? He just saw a guy fixing a phone cable, though.
Yeah, but the phone cable is that this guy's on his own. He works on his own on something that helps people connect to each other, and he can hear the sound of the wires of other people making connections that he cannot, because he is on his own doing this job, going from state to state.
That's not a metaphor. That's just what's happening.
No, the metaphor is like loneliness and being on the outside of communication.
Okay, is he lonely because he sings like this? I mean, did he previously work with a large group of people, and they just
they could not bear him?
Yeah, could you know what? If you could just fix the cables, mate. Do you know what I mean?
We've got 100 miles here.
It's fine. You don't need to sing. We're not singing. You know. It's okay not to sing. It's okay not to tweet. It's okay not to sing. And so they've just put him out on his own. You know.
I love that. Like, nobody's singing. Just
nobody's
like that very Glaswegian thing. Nobody's singing here.
Nobody else is singing. You know, just wheeshed. All right, just wheeshed.
Do you know what? The first time I can remember the first time I ever heard this song.
I'm
is
interested.
that Jimmy Webb was on later with Jules Holland.
Okay.
And Jules Holland did this. I think this was probably in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. And Jules Holland did a very big intro to Jimmy Webb coming on about, this is the legendary songwriter, written one of the greatest songs of all time, Wichita Lineman. And I was like, what? I've never even heard of that song. Wichita, what? And then he introduces Jimmy Webb, and Jimmy Webb plays this song, and I'm like, that is not one of the greatest songs of all time, mate. Like that, what the fuck is this? It was essentially my reaction. And for years, I stuck by my younger self's opinion of it. And then one day, as a much older man, I heard it again, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And it was the day that I learned that I was old. Because I realized, oh man, I like Wichita Lineman.
Is it because you like David Bowie so much, and it has that bit from Starman in it?
Well, that is nicked from. Is it "Set Me Free"? Why don't you, babe? What's that song?
Yes, Diana
That's
Ross.
nicked from that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in lots of songs apparently.
Yeah,
And it's the Pearl and Dean music as well.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, I suppose it is. So I do. Obviously, it is your own personal hell, so I've got no problem with you taking that down to hell if it's going to make you unhappy. There's also I don't know if you've seen this. There's a great.
I'm
video
sorry, Dan.
of,
Could you say that again? I couldn't hear you through those gritted teeth. So you've got no problem with it.
I've got no problem with you having it.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, that's
well, that's
fine.
That's well phrased.
That's yes, because it's your own personal hell.
Yep.
There is a great video online of Paul Rudd, who is being interviewed on BBC Radio 2 at the same time as Elbow are on the show. And Elbow, how on Radio 2 they often get the band to do a cover, and Radio 2 throw to Elbow to do their cover, and Elbow start playing, and they start playing this song, and Paul Rudd just explodes with joy, but he can't say anything because he's obviously Elbow on mic, they're performing, and you kind of just see his face light up, and he mouths to the camera, "This is my favorite song. This is my favorite song," and he is so excited, and then he starts miming to it, just because he loves it so much. Yep. And I think if you listen to Elbow play it and Paul Rudd have this genuine reaction to it,
it will be even worse.
It might change your mind.
I think I have heard Elbow's cover. I have not seen Paul Rudd's contemporaneous expression of joy. I'm prepared to challenge myself. I'm prepared to go out and to try and get something else from it. But at the moment, no, it is a universally adored song, objectively, seemingly one of the greatest songs of all time, and I hate it.
I think maybe when you turn 42 in November, it will suddenly flick a switch and you'll go they were right. This is amazing.
Okay.
This is heavy, man. This speaks to my soul. So we'll put the Paul Rudd video on our show notes so people can go and check that out just so they can see it, and you'll get to see it as well. So that is just about it for the first half. In a moment, Alex and I are going to be asking you for the artist you'll meet in hell, the one act whose work you just cannot get on with. So the listeners who are Patreon subscribers will be joining us for that, while the rest of them will be subjected to hell's finest advertisements. So to join the exalted members of our Patreon listeners, you can buy yourselves a little mercy when you end up eventually in our waiting room, simply by popping over to patreon.com/hellishpod and subscribing. Hello everyone. Sorry to interrupt the episode. Well, I'm not sorry really. I just wanted to let you know about a few ways you can keep us on the road to hell. The first is nice and cheap. Like, subscribe, follow, award us 5 stars, write a review, tell all your friends and enemies. We're at Hellish Pod on social media, apart from Instagram, where we are Hellish_pod. The more visible the podcast is, the more episodes we'll be able to make. The second is if you want to tip us, you can go to coffee.com/hellishpod to throw us a few coins, either just because you're nice or because you want to try bribing your way out of hell. That's coffee.com/hellishpod, ko-fi.com/hellishpod. We workshopped that name ourselves in hell just to make it very awkward for all podcasters who are asking for tips. The last one is to subscribe to our Patreon. You'll get longer, ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our 2 pilots. Plus, there's a bunch of other bonus stuff for higher tiers, including the chance to make a cameo appearance on a future episode. That's at patreon.com/hellishpod. Now, back to Hellish. Welcome back to Hellish. Things are about to take a somber turn because we now have to ask author Martin Stewart for a track that reminds him of a bad time in his life. So what's this, Martin?
This is The Blower's Daughter by Damien Rice.
And so it is. The colder water, the blower's daughter, the pupil.
This is like the Proustian Madeline of anyone who was 20 in 2001. Right. Alex, what can you tell us about The Blower's Daughter by Damien Rice?
This was the first single from the Irish singer Damien Rice's 2002 debut album, Oh. It features the vocals of Lisa Hannigan. The single was first released in 2001, but it didn't enter the UK singles chart until December 2004, when it peaked at number 27, most likely after featuring in the Mike Nichols film Closer. A bit of Rice background. He was a member of the rock band Juniper in the 1990s, who had a couple of hits in Ireland in 1998, after which Rice quit the band and went to live in Tuscany for a bit, which sounds very pleasant.
So, Martin, tell us about this bad time of your life.
This is to bring what I hope is a sort of nice connectedness to this list.
Okay.
Adding it weight and authenticity is when I was doing my job that I hated.
Okay.
So I had previously said it was sales in general, a particular kind of sales, which was sort of Mickey Mouse teddies out of a bag. But at this point, I was doing my recruitment consultancy job, which I loathed. I found my days empty and devoid of meaning, and I just, it was a bleak period of time. And again, I talked about that sort of thing of being able to suddenly see the future and thinking, oh Christ, let it not be this. And that was soundtracked by Damien Rice, among others. But this is one that really sticks because I think I'm a real sucker for sort of acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. That's a bit of an instinct that I have. I really like that kind of stuff, and I was quite beguiled by this album because it really fits into that. But I think there's a sort of keening, whining edge to this that I would say is connected to not to one of the best songs ever written, Wichita Lineman. But you can see, I think, maybe the sort of slight connection in terms of my response to it. It was interesting for me writing these things down. I realised, oh yeah, I really hate stuff like that, or stuff like that to which I respond in that way. I don't want to go back over the Wichita Lineman sort of debacle or beef with you that we had previously.
I tell you what, let's have Wales writers play Scotland writers.
Yep.
And the winner gets to decide whether Wichita Lineman is any good. How about that?
I think that's the only sensible thing to do.
Yeah,
actually.
I think that's how we should settle everything from now on.
Yeah, Library of Congress be damned.
Yeah.
But
so did you ever like The Blower's Daughter? Did you ever like Damien Rice? Because you talked about liking this kind of singer-songwriter thing.
Yeah.
So
at first,
did you like
I thought
it?
this was a work of genius. Yeah.
Right.
When I was first listening to this, I thought this guy has written the music that is sung by the human heart, but it sets my teeth on edge now. And I don't resent it as some things that I'm very against anything that I feel has been sort of made cynically. I don't like that kind of thing. I don't think this is. I think it's a sincere piece of work. And that's not why I don't like it. There's just something about that kind of, as though he's he's been wounded abdominally, but has paid for the studio and is going to fucking finish.
Right.
You know, like it's like it doesn't matter. Stop looking at your watch, mate. You know.
All right.
It has that kind of feel because there's loads of weird production bits. Sort of at the end, there's just sort of it feels like someone's turning off the lights, or there's someone picking up a book halfway through, and it's all quite weird production.
It's a weird single. I think like it doesn't really have a chorus. So it is a kind of weird like picking the 30 seconds that I was going to play in was a little bit difficult because there isn't really the bit that you go, oh, that's the blower's daughter. When you said then that you thought it was sincere, but that wasn't why you don't like it, I'm going to bet you a $5 that is exactly why Alex doesn't like it. It's just too sincere. Is that? Am I right?
Well, do you know what? What tipped me over the edge was it's this song. Finding out how important this song is to Ronan Keating and his wife.
Oh,
They bonded over it.
Yeah, I think I hate it more now for that. I think that feels kind of there's something icky about it. All of a sudden,
what often happens on Hellish is that you find that somebody doesn't like a song, and it's actually because other people do like it. That it kind of that's kind of why they don't like it is because everybody else likes it. I'm fascinated that both of you dislike this because one specific person doesn't likes it. That's quite hardcore.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I hadn't listened to Damien Rice since probably 2005 or 2006, and when I did, it just took me straight back to that time. I had this real kind of like moment of like, oh my god! And I remember the first time I heard it. I remember my friend Lynn bringing it back from she'd been away, and she played this thing to us, and I remember I was all listening to it, and like you say, thinking it was genius. But because I've not thought about it really in the 20 years between then and now. I still had that. It still for me was like, oh yeah, this beautiful thing. And
I don't mean to corrupt the purity of that.
No. It's your hell, as I said, but also, it's interesting that part of what has turned you against it is this bad time in your life, right? That it caused you back to the.
Well, it's what was interesting for me thinking about this is that I've had worse times in my life as well. I mean, this was a bad job, I've lost people in my family. I mean, I don't mean to make this completely so Freudian. I should be lying down on this couch. I mean, like I lost my mother 8 weeks after my wee girl was born. 7 weeks actually. So it was this real head spinning. That's a bad time in my life. Right. But I really love the artist Nick Mulvey. I'm not sure if you're aware of Nick Mulvey.
I'm not.
He's very much in this sort of. He's an acoustic singer songwriter, and he had a song that came out the day my mother died. He released a new song, and I listened to it, and it was you feel these moments. I'm quite I'm a delicate artistic person. I'm quite prone to these things where it feels that this is really speaking to you, And that song, I went to see him in Glasgow last year, my wife and I, and when he played it live, I had this absolute rush of, one of the most intense emotional experiences I've ever had. It was overwhelming. I really loved the song. That was a really bad time, and that song is absolutely the soundtrack of that, But it brings with it. I'm not afraid of melancholy. I quite like melancholy. I find it comforting, Whereas there's something about this time of my life. It was a shit job that I hated. You know what I mean? And there's something about the relative kind of cheapness of that shitness that makes it worse and less valuable. And there's no sort of depth to it, and it doesn't have that sort of comfort or, as I say, any kind of emotional worth. This is I hated that job, and this song I listened to all the time, and now I listen to it, and it's any time. It's when I thought of that time, that was the one that was the best one, and that was the best soundtrack I could find for it, and it was interesting that it is just as whiny as Wichita Lineman.
So. What was the just before we move on to the next song? What was the name of the Nick? Was it Nick Mulvaney? You said
Nick Mulvey. That's Mulvey.
And what was the name of the song?
That song is Unconditional. Which again, thinking about that, it's been this was my mother. This and I have my own child. I mean, you can see it's obviously quite an intense emotional and this song was called Unconditional, and it's about what, things that you've lost and looking for them, and very much that thing of, my favorite artist is speaking to me,
Yeah.
I'd recommend his stuff a lot. It's wonderful.
Well, we'll put that on. So what we do for each person who comes on Hellish is we put out a Spotify playlist of their Infernal playlist, and also any other songs we talk about. So we'll put
great.
Nick Mulvey on there as well, so that anyone who wants to listen to it just needs to head over to your page on Spotify, and they'll be able to check it out there.
Wonderful.
So we're now going to go on to track 4, which is a track you hate by an artist you love. So who is this?
This is Pyramid Song by Radiohead.
Jumps into the river, black-eyed angels swam with me.
Okay, Alex, what can you tell us about Pyramid Song?
Pyramid Song was released in May 2001 and was the first single from Radiohead's 5th studio album, Amnesiac. Radiohead's previous album, Kid A, hadn't included any singles, so this was the band's first single since No Surprises in 1998, and it charted in the top 10 all over the world. The song's siren-like sonic undertow was produced by Johnny Greenwood's Ondes Martenot, an unusual theremin-like device invented in 1928.
Ons Martineau, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, that's the one. A player of the Ons Martineau is called, what, Dan?
An Ons
An
Martinist?
ondist. No, an ondist.
Oh, an ondist.
Lovely.
Ah.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start with your love of Radiohead first, Martin.
Well, I was born in 1982, and so when I was in my sort of, the kind of senior phase of high school, The Bends was probably the album that me and my group of friends most revered. That we took, it was the best music that existed, that was available to us. We absolutely loved it, and it's obviously got lots of that sort of acoustic sensibility that I really like, and the guitars on it and things. We then had OK Computer, which sort of did that thing of another album kind of challenging you a bit and taking you to new areas, and it's an artist you love, so you go with them. And then when I was leaving school, so in 6th year, I left school in 2000, and they did the Kid A tour, and I went to see them in Glasgow Green. I still have my ticket for this, under a big top, We're Legion and all that.
Oh yeah, I remember the big top gigs, yeah.
And so I went to that expecting hopefully the Bends, maybe a bit of Pablo Honey, some OK Computer, and then we got this sort of kind of digital like sound assault, and it was just, Kid A really grew on me, but I was disappointed at the time because that wasn't what I was looking for from them, but it really grew on me. Amnesiac less so, and this song, when you played the little sample, I was I was gesticulating towards you with a kind of shrug, like, I think we can bypass this part of the chat because everybody's going to hear that and go, oh, okay, what the hell,
It's quite interesting because last week we had some other Glaswegians on. We had a band called Neverfine, and for this section, for song 4, they also picked Radiohead. They picked Creep, and their thing was that Kid A was the apex. Like the thing for them, but they're in their I think
they're considerably
in
younger.
Late 20s,
they're sort of late 20s, 30s. So it's interesting, sort of, when you come into Radiohead.
Yeah.
You like the stuff that they're doing then. It seems to be the most.
I do find it interesting that kind of the kind of Radiohead vowel shift between OK Computer and Kid A, and that some people absolutely follow through from Kid A onto, I'd say, like In Rainbows is the record where they marry the two things. They marry the kind of original Radiohead and the electro experimental Radiohead, and
oh my god, I'm so glad we've agreed about something. That's something really
it's all right. We're still going to do that football match though. I'm pretty sure Ryan Giggs has written a book, so That counts.
Does it count if it's ghost written? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Martin. We're now going to go on to track 5. So it is earworm birthing season at the moment, and Alex has brought along one of the larvae, so you can pet it. But before you do, you need to feed him something so he doesn't try to take your tongue off. That's the larvae, not Alex. So to that end, we need a track. Which one's stuck in your head? You can never get out.
This is We Don't Talk About Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no. We don't talk about Bruno. But it was my wedding day.
It was our wedding
We were getting ready and there wasn't a cloud in the sky.
No clouds allowed in the sky.
Bruno walks in with a mischievous grin.
Thunder.
You telling this story or am I?
Okay, so we don't talk about Bruno. Alex, tell us about that one, please.
Well, it's from Disney's 2021 animated musical Encanto, and this song was written and composed by a friend of the podcast, Lin-Manuel Miranda. The song was one of Disney's biggest crossover successes. It got to the top of the US Billboard 100 chart, becoming only the second #1 song from a Disney animated film. It even topped the UK singles chart for 7 weeks. And as it's an ensemble song, this song set the record for the most credited recording artists ever, 6, on a #1 on the Billboard 100.
Oh, you know that I'm going to ask you what the other Disney song that got to #1 is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And what is it then?
It is A Whole New World.
Ah, okay.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. Okay, so Martin, this is an earworm. How did you first come across this, and how has it stuck so firmly into your head?
My ultimate earworm, and the one that I sing all the time, and that actually yesterday in the car, my son said, "I've had enough of that song. Please stop." is I Wish by Skilo,
Oh, right. Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty cool.
which is
Yeah.
a great one.
Yeah.
But it's a great one. I like that. I'll sing that all the time. My kids now, I'll get to the end of one of the lines and I'll
Yeah.
point at them in the back of the car and they sing the rest of the line for me. It's great. We love it.
Oh, that's
I can't-
impressive, because I would say that song is an earworm in that I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I had a rabbit in a hat and girl like a caller. I can't do any more than that, right? like it's an earworm, but only for like the first 4 lines or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you've trained the children to do it as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's Wish I Had a Rabbit in a Hat and a Bat and a 6'4" Impala. Which is
okay.
a completely odd line, But I'll point in the back and they'll go, Impala, It's really it's really fun. And on that basis, and as I say, I love the format. I'm taking it very seriously. I clearly can't take Skilo to hell. He has
Right.
no place there,
Okay, fair enough.
The Disney songs, because especially my wee girl, both my kids, they're 7 and 4 now. But they both do this, but especially my wee girl will do this. It'll be a sort of phase of Tangled, or particularly in lockdown, she went through a Brave phase, and that will be the only one she'll want to watch for maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, and then it will go, and a new one will come in, and it will just be that Encanto in this case, and it's just the songs become like we'll be making dinner, my wife and I in the kitchen, and we're both singing the songs. And what I found especially with this, and this is quite late for me. It's 8 o'clock just now.
Yeah.
I'm in bed by 9 o'clock every night. This is quite late, and I'm apprehensive about having heard this so close to bedtime. Is that
Oh.
when I am up in the night, as I will be, because I'm in my early 40s, I'm in middle age, I'm going to get up to pee, and if I don't, my son will. So normally I get back to sleep, but if I don't, what I have found is that this will play in my head, and it has that really, see when you were saying about the Skilo lyrics, that there's a particular torture to singing a song in your head over and over again when you don't know all the words.
Yes.
And I have that with this. I know most
It's almost impossible, because at the end of this song, they're all singing like different stuff over each other,
Right.
and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't possibly keep up with it. I put it on in the car today, though, and my son could sing all of the bits in that sort of singing over each other, which was quite impressive.
So that big groaning sound means I now have to go and fetch Martin's work placement. So Alex, while I'm away doing that, can you recap the Infernal playlist?
I can indeed. A track that Martin is embarrassed to have owned and previously liked is Come On You Reds by the Manchester United football squad. A track universally adored that Martin cannot stand, controversially, Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell. Track number 3, a track that brings Martin down, is The Blower's Daughter by Damien Rice. Track number 4, a track he hates by an artist that he loves, is Pyramid Song by Radiohead. And track number 5, a track once stuck in Martin's head he can never get out, We Don't Talk About Bruno from Encanto. Which of the 5 songs, Martin, would you least like to hear on repeat? Which one is the ultimate Hellish song for you?
I think I'm going to slightly surprise myself and say Pyramid Song.
Ooh, okay.
Which I think just, there's something about it that the slightly off-kilter rhythm of it and the bum notes, I think would be the worst thing I could possibly have with me for eternity. I'm definitely going to take that one.
Okay, well, that is what we will play you out with. So Tracy says you are going to be heading up our new brand of plush Satans. So we've got these like adorable, cuddly little devils that you're going to be going out pub to pub trying to sell a big bag of cuddly Satans. So I hope that you are going to find that suitably hellish.
Oh, man.
Your head is now going to be filled with the 5 tracks you will meet in hell, and the memory of all other music will forever be wiped from your mind. Before you are flung from the waiting room and the large metal door slams shut behind you, is there anything you would want to tell the listeners about?
What I've got coming up next is the 4th Bridget Vanderpuff book, which is Bridget Vanderpuff and the Monster Mountain Mystery, where we find her in the Swiss Alps dealing with all sort of chocolate-based shenanigans. And it was a lot of fun, so it's out on the 5th of September.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Good luck, of course, with the Bloody Scotland Award. I think that's September the 13th
That's right.
that's announced. So we'll be rooting for you. Good luck with that. So all I can say now is, Martin Stewart, thank you, and go to hell. Hellish was written and presented by me, Daniel Whelan, and Satan's favourite purveyor of cat misadventure, Alex Gale. You can support the show on patreon.com/hellishpod, find us on social media at hellishpod, apart from Instagram where it's hellish_pod. You can listen to all of Martin's choices and our ongoing Ultimate Infernal playlist, bringing everyone's choices together at hellishpod on Spotify. Until next time, damn you all to hell.